All right, folks, it is my distinct honor to be joined by Sydney. You know her as Sydney Says Things on TikTok. And I've gone on record many times as saying that she is the smartest person that I follow on TikTok. I include myself in that. She's smarter than me. And so I feel very lucky to have her on board. I'm sure she's going to have some great insights. Sydney, we're going to talk a little bit about, leftism and culture and stuff, right in our wheelhouse and everything. But I wanted to start things off with you introducing yourself to everyone. Like, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, things of that nature.
Um, well, I grew up in Texas. I lived here pretty much my whole life, except for I lived in Florida for like a year and New York for a year. But yeah, I was raised around pretty much nothing but conservatives, Republicans. I don't know. I wish I had an interesting backstory, but it's not very interesting.
So did you grow up? So I remember you saying something once. You commented about not being Christian, but knowing John 3:16. Were you not raised to be religious or in a religious household?
I was raised Episcopalian for a little while, but we just stopped going to church when I was like 7. I don't think neither of my parents were really that into it. They were just kind of like doing it because they were supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely left the church before it really had like a major impact on me. And I think in general, Episcopalian is a lot less like hardcore.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller ask to be Episcopalian, and I think so. You know how there's that rumor people talk about the Masons are taking over the world and the Masons have all these presidents and stuff. There have been more Episcopalian presidents than Masonic presidents. And so if we really want the conspiracy theories, the Episcopalians are taking over, which they seem pretty chill, if you ask me, like as far as religions are concerned. So, Episcopalians and Unitarians, like who gives a fuck? They're just kind of hanging out there.
They're kind of a like low key religion. I don't
Yeah.
think many people don't immediately think of them. So I'm kind of surprised by that. I didn't know that about the
Well,
presidents.
well, it does. I guess it does kind of make sense when you think about the earlier presidents that how little they cared about organized religion. Like a lot of
Yeah.
them were, deists or just like believed in this higher power or a approximate cause or prime mover of some sort, but weren't too really interested into the nitty gritty of actually, weaving together this tapestry of absurdities to hold the religion together. So it does kind of make sense in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So when did you first get involved into politics? Like, how did you get about with that? Did you grow up? Were your parents or your friends political, or did you just kind of veer into that one day?
No. My dad's a little bit he's kind of political. Like I can always talk politics with him if I want to, but he definitely never like really pushed it on me or anything.
What were your
And
dad's politics?
he's libertarian.
Oh, interesting. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I can actually talk to him about like, we can both like talk about the problems with the government and stuff. And he'll agree with me, but then he just reaches a different conclusion. Like he's like, and that's why we should deregulate everything.
Yeah.
Like, no. But we'll usually agree like up until that point on pretty much everything. But yeah, I pretty much started off as a libertarian really when I was in high school and stuff. And then I was a liberal in college. I, had the liberal
Yeah.
brainwashing from my college professors.
They got you.
They did. And then I found out about socialism from Bernie Sanders, like most people. And that's when I really started moving towards the left and like learning a lot more. Like I really didn't even know that socialism or communism was like an actual possibility
Yeah.
until like 2016. I really believed the whole like, oh, communism is when you have a shoe factory and everyone, one guy does nothing and everyone else works hard and then he gets all the money or something like that. I don't even remember what it
Yeah.
is now, but I
It's
bought into all that.
you can't even blame you for that either, though. I mean, that's kind of what we're taught. We're taught that communism is literally, you don't work and you sit on your ass all day and everybody else takes care of you. And by the way, there's a guy with a beret and a funny mustache who's going to come mow everyone down every once in a while. That's basically what we're taught is what communism is. But I'm interested. You grew up libertarian. That I did not see that coming. I did not see that coming at all. That is because I grew up conservative for the most part, and I had like a libertarian phase for about 10 minutes. But like, when did you veer away from libertarianism? Like, was that at college or was that happening in high school
Um,
or earlier?
really in college, like when I say I was a libertarian, like I was very much a liberal libertarian. I um never understood like why. I mean, I never bought into the whole like social issues that Republicans, their stances on that. I always thought it was just completely illogical. But I just didn't understand like the connection between fiscal policy and social policy. Um, so that's why I really leaned libertarian because just on uh, like just from the minimal knowledge I had, I was like, well, I don't want more government. I don't want more taxes. That sounds terrible. But I was very socially progressive still. And it wasn't until college that I learned about systemic racism, really. I took a class on it on punishment in society, and it was about like the school to prison pipeline and um, mass incarceration and all of that stuff like that. And we read the new Jim Crow, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I just didn't know how much I didn't know until then. And that's when I really understood that it wasn't just like, we didn't defeat racism when the Civil Rights Act was passed, or it was still very much woven into our country and stuff. And I just didn't understand that until I did.
I do like that is literally the conservative thought process that racism stopped in 1964. It's that it says so right here on this paper, and it's over. It's all taken care of. Like that's generally the line they go with. But I have a question with you since you grew up libertarian. This is always when did you notice the because you said like you were really cool with social stuff, and libertarians are cool with a lot of social stuff like drug legalization. They're usually pretty good with stuff like that. Foreign policy, they're at least isolationist would be the best way, but I noticed a while back a very strong like neo-Nazi thread going with libertarians, like even more than your straight up conservatives. Like they seem like
Yeah.
they I don't know, is it different than it was in the past? Because now I see a libertarian, I just think absolute Nazi, and they kind of give the game away with how much they're against abortion and stuff too. Like there's like, okay, so that's not a libertarian policy, but have you noticed a divergence in that, or has it always been that way? You didn't see it, or what?
I really didn't know any libertarians. I wasn't around. Like, I mean, my dad was, like I said, but he didn't really talk about it that much. I really didn't even know he was until like 5 years ago, probably.
Oh, wow.
I just always thought he was a Republican. But I just kind of determined that that was what I was from taking like political compass tests, and like learning about the different political ideologies and being like, oh, I guess that's the one I align with. But I didn't know anyone else that like classified themselves as that. And like I said, everyone I knew was a Republican. So I didn't really like, my school was like, they were either like had no idea about politics at all and like had no opinion on anything, or were very Republican.
Well, those are I've pointed out a few times that those are pretty much the same thing. That if you, it's I mean it's the more you find out about politics, the less likely you are to be a Republican. Like it has to be that way. And
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you grew up in Texas, so you grew up in the Southwest. So isn't it odd though that if you just go through, you said a lot of them were apolitical or didn't think much about politics. But if you just go through the American education system as like a regular ass person, you will come out a conservative. Like it's built to make you a conservative, and like that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, definitely. And especially like the school that I went to, it was like a pretty like middle class school, um, but almost all white, like predominantly white for sure. Um, so there really was just no exposure to any other point of view on any subject. Like all of our teachers were white, and I mean, you only know what you know about the world.
Yeah.
So we all go through the school system thinking we're learning how the world works and like how history happened and stuff like that. And if you're never exposed to more than that, then that's what you know and that's what you
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, if you're never exposed to it, and especially if you're part of that group. I've said many times that
Yeah.
if I were a white guy, I would probably still be a Republican today. I mean, and of course, there's plenty of white guys who grew up conservative and aren't conservative any longer, but the majority of them stay conservative. And so, seeing the world through the lens of a minority does shape things a lot. And if you're
Yeah.
not a minority and you're only around other non-minorities, it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to be a conservative.
Yeah, definitely. Um, we really like people joke about this a lot and talk about it, but like we learned like, oh, the Civil War was about states' rights, and the missions in Texas. I mean, there were missions all over the place, but there were a lot of them in Texas, Spanish missions. That those were just like helping the Native Americans to learn how to be civilized and stuff like that. Um, it was a very skewed version of history, very whitewashed version of history. And it comes across as being incredibly neutral the way that it's taught. Um, like, I don't, that's kind of my biggest problem with the public school system in general is that the stuff it's not taught in a way where you can tell that it has a bias.
Yeah.
Like, you watch Fox News and you know that that's an extreme right wing bias, but it always has this like neutrality to it where it seems like you're just getting unbiased straight up information, and it's not until you learn more that you're like, hold on a second.
Yeah, yeah. I like to say that I didn't come up with this, but the United States history, we don't teach history, we teach mythology. We teach
Yeah.
like these founding legends. And so and honestly, the way that we teach history, this isn't limited to the United States, but the way we teach history is very flawed in that it's like the great man style of history. It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, it's like, hey, this person was so awesome or this person was so evil that they caused this, instead of actually analyzing the material conditions and the reality of the people that experienced it. And what happens is we end up creating like these two boxes of history. We create
Yeah.
good people boxes and bad people boxes. And so the founding fathers, well, they get in the good people box because that's where our origins come from. And yeah, the founders, they're good, so we should respect them. Of course, they were human beings, they had their flaws, but
Mhm.
overall they were good people and we should respect them as such. And you're taught this year after year after year in school. Everyone repeats it when you get out of school. It's repeated in common in popular culture. So whenever you bring up like any of the atrocities by the founding fathers, people get really upset by it. Like, no, what are you
Yeah.
doing? You're tarnishing the reputation of a good person. It's like, no, that's not how you need to look at history. You look at history as in what were this person like. If we're looking at a person, what were their ideas? What were their words? What were their actions? And what effects did they have on the environment and the people? And what can we learn from that? But we're so busy, trying to, either canonize or demonize people that we lose sight of that.
Yeah, definitely. I made a video about something kind of along those lines one time about the like Confederate statues and yeah, and how people get so offended talking about historical figures and exactly what you said. They feel like you're tarnishing the legacy of a good person. Um, and it's because we do have this like mythological view of it, and it's so narrative based. Like the way that we learn about history is very narrative based, and the
Yeah.
narrative we learn is always of these, great people, and who makes who makes it into the history books as being a great person, but people from the, wealthy class, like that's who has access to, the ships to go be an explorer, or that gets to be a philosopher, or, discover new things. Like it's people that grow up wealthy. So we're really just completely separated from the working class and the poor throughout history. Like we never learn about that point of view, really.
Yeah, that's entirely true. And it's really frustrating because there's a lot more to learn there than there is in like the individual actions of princes and generals. Like that, you can learn a lot more about history than seeing what's going on at the top. I did
Yeah.
want to mention about I tell you what I don't understand though. I do get it. Like if you want to, if someone is just like really, really dedicated into defending the honor of Benjamin Franklin or something, okay, all right, I guess I can understand that. I don't get it for the Confederacy. I don't. And even as a kid, like growing up in a school that did defend the Confederacy, it never made any sense to me because they try to walk this fine line in saying that slavery was bad, but the Confederacy was actually good. And it doesn't make any sense, but because like I do get wanting to defend, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom. Okay, all right, that's good. So all right, we should respect that. But fucking Jeb Stuart,
Yeah.
I mean, like Braxton Bragg. Why do we got to defend these guys? I never understood that, even as a conservative kid.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like people really defend it in like like they take it as a personal attack.
They do, they do.
So that's what they're defending. Like they're defending themselves more than they're defending like the actual Confederacy. I think part of it might have to do with the way that in America we just don't really have very much culture. Like white people don't have very much culture. Um, and I think that that's something that a lot of us really want to have. So we try to like attach ourselves to cultures, like kind of create it for ourselves almost. Um, and a lot of people from the South have like a really deep attachment to Southern culture,
Yeah,
um, including the Confederacy, because of that. And if they have to, demonize the Confederacy or like look at it for what it actually was, then they're going to have to kind of distance themselves from that aspect of what they consider to be really the only aspect of their culture.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. It's and it's this the reflexive defense of people who obviously did something wrong. And it's really funny to me because I made a video a while ago talking about how in the United States your average black person is 20% white. And because of the rape from the slave owners and everything. And people sometimes they'll use it as a gotcha. It's like, aha, well, your ancestors were slave owners too. It's like, yeah, yeah, and I don't feel the need to defend them. Like, why is that so hard
Yeah.
for you? It's pretty easy to say, I don't care if my ancestor did it, it was still pretty fucked up. But as far as like white culture and everything, this is a great point. It's a great point because in like United States, white people have assumed the identity of whiteness, which isn't a thing really. It's just like this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's such a shame because I never thought about the way you put it is that they're trying to create some sort of culture because like Irish people aren't Irish Americans anymore. They're white. You've given
Yeah.
away all your Irish heritage, your Irish culture. You've given away Scottish heritage, German heritage. You've given French. You've given it all away to be white, and it doesn't mean anything. And so you'll glob onto anything to try to create some sort of ex nihilo culture out of nothing. That's a pretty good point.
When I was like growing up, the first like 10 years of my life, I lived in South Texas, and it was just way more diverse. Like the school I went to was like we had like four white people in the school. Like it was like the opposite of where I ended up in high school. Um, and we would go over to our friend's house that were Indian, and they would have like Bollywood stuff playing on TV, and they had like their outfits and did like their traditional dances and stuff like that. And I was just so not jealous, but like sad that I didn't
Uh,
have anything like that, you know, like that.
well,
Um,
you didn't have the boot scoot boogie. I mean, you didn't. I mean, didn't that compare to?
and Texas really isn't like as southern as the other southern states are. Like
Yeah,
it's very
it's
weird because it's like
Western. It's Western more than Southern, I'd say. Texas. It's more like, it's closer to Arizona than it is to Alabama. And so yeah,
yeah.
that's true. That's a good point. Southern Texas. So I used to date a girl in Houston 1,000 years ago, and we would. I remember going to Corpus Christi, seeing the South. South Texas is incredibly diverse, and I North Texas, I don't know. Actually, I think about it because the only part I've seen is the South part. Because I went to San Antonio and everything. So when you said like it was an all white area you grew up in, that did sound strange to me because I've been to Texas, but I've only been a couple cities, but
Yeah.
I did not see like a lack of minorities where I went.
Um, I lived in Beaumont, so it's not even like a big city. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a really small city. Um, and yeah, it was very diverse, but up here, you're only going to get that if you're in an actual city. Like all of the suburbs are like pretty much completely white.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask something you mentioned about how American school history classes don't present the information as if it's biased. And I'm glad you brought that up because I remember you making a video a while ago and you were talking about the difference between, I can't remember, but you were describing what bias was. And I had a differing opinion on it. I can't even actually remember everything you said, but correct me where you disagree here because I think you will, but based on what I saw, is I always say that I am biased. I'm biased all over the place, and I admit it. And like, there's a difference between neutrality and objectivity. And so, like, you can be objective about the facts here, but in my best efforts to present something objectively, I'm still going to be biased. And the example I like to use is
Yeah.
if I'm talking about geography, I'm going to be approaching this from an anti-flat Earth bias. Like I'm going to be like every time. And so but I think you said something that you disagree that bias is something that you can get rid of. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's not that I think that anyone is unbiased. Like everyone has biases, but it's like, everyone has them to a certain degree, like where you can't get rid of it,
Yeah.
like I'm going to have a bias that comes from being a woman and
Mm-hmm.
being American and growing up in Texas. Like everything that makes me who I am is a bias,
Yeah.
is going to make me biased in certain ways. But some things are like, I don't think that we typically consider those things to be biases because they're so, um, everyone has them.
Idiosyncratic to every Indian.
Yeah. But, like the person that I was making the video in response to, they were saying that I didn't understand what was going on in Palestine because I didn't have a family member that was in the Holocaust and I'd never fought in a war. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I haven't either of those things, but those things give you an extreme bias towards the situation because you're not able to see it objectively at all because you have this background that is making you, I don't want to say more empathetic, but like making you see things that aren't really there.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to think of how to say it. It's kind of like, I don't know. There is no actual objectivity. Like, I don't
No,
believe
no.
that there is.
Yeah.
And there's no actual neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that attempting to be neutral is worse than not.
Yeah. Okay. We are in total agreement here. All right. Good. We're all right. That's all right. Good.
Yeah. because when you're, like putting extra weight on the scale to make them balanced, that's not fair. Like that's not actually neutral or objective. Like you're forcing things to be
Yeah.
balanced for the sake of neutrality, but that's actually putting a huge amount of emphasis on something that doesn't need to be emphasized as much and taking away a lot of weight from something that is a lot heavier.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I'm talking about, voting, I'm not going to waste time saying, well, some people think women shouldn't vote. No, get the fuck out of here. Like we're done with that conversation. Like I don't need to
Exactly.
give equal time to absurd thoughts. And that bothers me so much because people like, well, you're not considering this movie. Listen, there are a million points of view you could have on any topic. So I'm just going to be honest. Like most everything I say is going to come from a left wing point of view. Take that for what it is. And if you're honest about it, people respect it. But it really is annoying when people say, man, I got no dog in this race at all. I'm just calling balls and strikes. Fuck you. No, you're not. And
Yeah.
it's lauded as something to be that we should aspire to. That's like, oh, you know what you should do? You should be completely neutral on everything and say, no, you're not. So quit pretending it.
Yeah. What I meant in that video more so, I see how it definitely would have came across that way, like that I was trying to say like, well, I'm completely objective in this. But I meant like as far as like the specific situation went, I didn't have any preconceived notions going into it. Um, so I wasn't, a lot of people have this thing where the first thing they learn is what they believe. And it's incredibly difficult to get somebody to change their mind after they believe that they know something to be true. Um, but I didn't have that. I mean, if you would have asked me about it a year ago, like if this would have happened a year ago, I probably would have at first been like, oh, poor Israel. And then I would have looked into it and I would have ended up figuring out, oh, never mind. And I probably would have ended up in the same place, but um, I knew a little bit about it going into it. Um, but I really knew about it from like a looking it up and researching it for the sake of knowing about it, not
Yeah.
like being told, oh, this is horrible. You need to learn about this.
Yeah. I like that. I like that line of, would you say that most people learn something and how'd you phrase that? You said the first thing they learn is what you believe.
Yeah, the first thing somebody learns is what they believe, and it's incredibly
Yeah,
difficult to change somebody's mind.
it is. It really is. And I, I'm glad you brought the example with the Israel Palestine thing because it's been equal parts devastating and equal parts, somewhat hopeful that the solid narrative is that Israelis good, Palestinians bad. That's as far as you need to think about it. But this the response, the anti-Zionist response, is something I've never seen in my life. I couldn't imagine the upswell of support for Palestinian human rights happening even last year, let alone
Yeah,
5-10 years ago. So that, I mean, it doesn't do a lot to help the people that are dead or that are displaced or half of Gaza being destroyed, but I mean it's something, and that does give me a little bit of hope. I mean, for whatever that's worth, but it is good to see that.
yeah. I think it feels like it does nothing that so many people do support Palestine and stuff, and I'm with you on that. Like I was really shocked how many people were able to immediately come to that conclusion, or very quickly come to that conclusion. And just from seeing the way that like Netanyahu and Biden and stuff have reacted to this, and the White House in general and Democrats in general, I don't think that they were expecting it either.
Nope,
And
certainly not.
I think that they've been really struggling to deal with that. And I think that anything that throws people like that off their game plan is good,
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion.
totally agree. This is unrelated, but I was thinking this when you talk about the first thing you learn is what you believe. Um, I remember like 5-6 years ago, I had a friend of mine, and she had mentioned we were talking about gender issues or something like that, and she said that, well, uh, I have a friend that goes by they, them. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? That's absurd. Like it was nonsense to me. And then
Yeah.
just a couple years later, I find out more. I was like, okay, all right, I see now. And I understand my initial reaction because it is something I wasn't familiar with.
Hmm.
And I don't get why everyone's not like this, where you just learn more about something. Oh, I can actually unlearn something I learned in the
Yeah.
past. And a lot of people refuse. And listen, I do understand it for older people. Like, I actually do. Like, I'm not saying I condone it, but I get it that,
Yeah.
I don't expect someone who was born in 1942 to understand why his great nephew is a trans uwu cat girl now. I get why that would just fry his brain. It wouldn't make any sense. Like, I don't expect him to understand that. Now, that's going to happen to me too one day. Like, one of these days, I'm going to be so old that I'll look at something that, the young kids are doing and I'll say, that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. I probably don't even agree with it. Like, I will reach that point one day. And I can do one of two things. I can decide, okay, I can realize that the world is not for me anymore. It's for them. The world's going to move on with or without me, eventually without me. And I can just come to terms with that. Or I can make it my entire political identity to try to shit on these people who are going to inherit the world when I'm dead in 5 years. That part I don't get. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. What did you say? It was oh yeah, I do understand why older people are like that, but I don't think that you'll be like that because I don't think that that's just like inherent to getting older. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's because when you skip so many steps in between things, it's just so shocking. Like they hadn't accepted that, women deserve rights or that, um, that gay people exist. So if they're still that far back, then to jump from that to, they, them is normal is just like a gigantic leap. But if you're actually keeping up with stuff and you are open to learning new things and changing your mind, then there's never going to be a point where you're just like, whoa, where is this coming from? Because you'll have also been following along every step of the way. Like you're never going to have that gigantic leap because that comes from digging your heels in and refusing to learn more. And then you
Uh,
just get far behind.
That's a good point. That's a good point because this has been borne out in my experience, everyday life. And the examples, there's two examples that come to mind. The first is, you ever go to a self checkout and there's some 60-year-old having to use the self checkout, looking at the machine like they have to disarm a bomb or something. And it's like I remember this happening a few times, and it's like, credit cards have been around since the 70s. Like,
Yeah.
this shit is not new. You had plenty of time to catch up with this, but you still whipped out the checkbook every time you went up there. You pulled out the glasses, made everyone people wait in line, and you refused to catch on board with it. And now that you have to do it, you're slowing. You can't accept it. Another one is clothes. So when I was in high school, my dad had like a secondhand store, and there was this older lady who worked with us, Miss Victoria. She was this older Mexican lady, and she had immigrated from Mexico in the 40s. And the clothes she wore, I don't know if the show I Love Lucy.
Hmm.
Okay, so you think of like the capri pants and stuff, like the outfit that Lucille Ball would wear in that show. That's what Miss Victoria wore all the time. That style of clothes from like the 1950s. And every day she wore these clothes. And this is like the 90s, early 2000s. And I was like, well, why did she dress like that? And they said, okay, well, those are the clothes that were popular when she was young. I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, she was young in the 60s, but she was also young in the 70s. And she was also kind of young in the 80s, and she still dressed like that. So it might just be something with like that generation where they globbed onto something, from when they were 20 and said, "Yep, this is the way things are going to be, and I don't want to change it."
I think a lot of it has to do with exposure and stuff too. Like back then, trends moved so much slower.
Mm-hmm.
So, with clothes and stuff like that, you miss out on a couple of those changes and you're far behind because
Yeah.
those changes are really only happening every like decade, every 5, 10 years. Like the big changes where you can tell, like, oh, it shifted.
It's
And
oh, go ahead.
oh, now we have so much exposure to new ideas and new information. And I mean, especially if you look at like Gen Z with fashion specifically, like how quickly trends cycle. Um, it's, I think, in some ways a lot easier to get left behind because things are moving so fast, but it's also a lot harder to get left behind because it's so easy to see what you could be missing.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. We also I don't know, the decades, I think the last 20 years, the decades have kind of just blended together. Like there is like a very certain look and sound that you can identify with the 1980s. And it's kind of like how, the Wonder Years, that show came out in the 80s and it was about the 50s, and the 50s seemed a million years ago. But if that show was made today, it'd be about the 90s, which doesn't seem like a million years ago. Like things just don't catch up that quick. But I'm sorry, we're on a track there. But one thing I want to talk about was so you talked about your political evolution. A question that I like to ask people is: was there a specific moment, or maybe a set of moments that radicalized you? I'll start with mine. I was visiting a friend of mine out in Baltimore, and I parked my car and went to the apartment complex, and I came back down later that night and my car was gone, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize that I had parked in a no parking zone. So I looked on the brick wall there, and it had a little sign saying that the tow away zone is here, and call this number and this location, you can get your car. So I had to call a taxi, and it was like $30, to get a ride from there to where my car was impounded. It was $275 to get my car out. And of course, the vending machine only lets you get $200 out at a time. So I had to pay twice to get the fee, $275. So it's already at $300 now. And on the sign, I remember it saying that if you don't, get your car out of impound that day, it's $75 for every day afterward for X number of days. Now, fortunately, I could afford, the $350 to get my car out that day. But I was thinking, it's like, what if I was a single parent and like I needed that car tomorrow morning to get my kids to school, and I didn't have $350 in my bank account, and I had to wait and get charged more and more money. That was one of the first moments that I remember it supercharging my view on the our hellscape in the United States, and how we're just punishing poor, because a rich person, it wouldn't bother at all. I wasn't even rich and it didn't bother me. But if you were a lower class, it could, like, that $350 could fuck up your entire year. And so it was moments like that that really got it going for me. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah. Similar idea. Like it's the realizing, like, if I had it anywhere, if I didn't have this like privilege that I have, like a specific privilege, I would be completely screwed.
Yeah.
Like it's having that realization where you're like, how are other people, doing this? When I went to college, I was really confronted with the fact that, we weren't all starting on a level playing field. Like I kind of just thought that that was how it worked. Like if you worked hard, if you were smart, you could get ahead. Like everyone could do it. You could get financial aid. You could, everyone had a path forward. And I was really confronted with, like, even with as much like privilege as I had, I still was just miles behind
Mm-hmm.
the people that had real money. I went to UT in Austin, and there were just so many insanely rich people there. And I was like, I was couldn't even afford to eat most days, and I was just like, so I'm having to worry about how I'm going to feed myself while these other people are able to, just be in sororities and fraternities and clubs and go out and go shopping and do whatever. And I get like $100 ticket and I'm just completely ruined.
Yeah.
And I am somebody who I've always been really, really good with money. Um, like notoriously good with money in my family and friends and stuff. And I was like, if I can't make this work being like as good with money as I am, then like people shouldn't have to be exceptional to survive. And I was like, if I'm, I know that I'm a smart person and good with money and I'm struggling this much, then anyone with less like less monetary skill than me, how on earth would they be able to do this? Like you shouldn't have to be exceptional to live. And that really, I don't know, kind of opened my eyes to the possibility, or not the possibility, but it showed me how much I didn't know and how skewed my view had been up to that point. Um, I wouldn't say that, like, other than the classes that I took, like teaching me about like systemic racism and stuff like that, I wouldn't say that there was like one inciting incident, but it was kind of just like the collection of all of these little incidents
Yeah,
that
yeah.
built up to, um, me at first believing like, oh, we just need to reform the system. And then with the 2016 election and with Bernie and stuff getting screwed over by the DNC, like that really showed me like, okay, maybe that's not really how it works. Maybe it's not actually like, oh, we just all vote and then things get better. If we all want this, then it'll work.
Vote harder. Vote harder.
Yeah,
My
kind of
favorite.
just like repeated disillusionment.
Yeah, yeah. And how could you not hit it? I mean, honestly, like the rational thing to do is to be disillusioned, honestly. Like you're living in a fantasy world if you're not. When you were talking about people who could make it just based on the circumstances of their birth, one thing that's always I've been mystified by. So there's several types of conservatives, but the two I want to talk about is you have your conservatives who were, born into wealth or born into a good situation. And then you have conservatives who, were born, with the boot on their neck. And then they were the 1 in 100 that clawed their way up and they became successful or
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. Now, they have survivorship bias, obviously, but I do understand their mindset. I do. They're just like, hey, listen, if I could do it, anyone could do it. Of course, that's not true. Of course, that's not taking into account, any number of things. Your healthy body, your family, your social network, the fact that you weren't crippled in a car accident at 9 years old. Like you're not thinking about any of that shit. But the people who really mystify me are the ones who are born wealthy and
Mm-hmm.
still preach this thing. Because listen, I gotta tell you, if I was someone like Ben Shapiro,
Mm-hmm.
and I was born upper class and I happen to be upper class as an adult and successful, even if I believe with every fiber of my being that conservative economic policy is correct and that these people just need to work harder, I'd never say that shit out loud. I would be embarrassed to. Like I would literally not my pride and my dignity would not let me say that shit out loud
Yeah.
because what the fuck do I know? And that's a lot of conservatives, and I don't understand it at all. Like I get like someone like Ben Carson. Ben Carson grows up in the projects. He's dirt poor, and he just happens to be uh a great medical student, and which is weird that Ben Carson is actually like a world-renowned brain surgeon. It's so fucking strange that
Yeah.
he's an idiot in everything else, but he's a great brain surgeon. I do get why he says, okay, yeah, this works. Look at me. I worked hard and I made it. But someone who's born into it, I don't understand how they can say that with straight face.
Honey, just a minute. Yeah, no, I had the same, like I thought the same thing. Like I'm just like I don't understand how people can be so smart and also so unaware at the same time. Um unless they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, like do you so this is the point we get to a lot. We get this a lot being left. This is like I know a lot of conservatives and I know they're not stupid. I mean, it's not most of them, but I know a lot of them that are actually intelligent. Like, is it just actually malevolence? Like, do they actually like wish harm on people? It's a weird thing a weird rabbit hole to go down.
I think part of it too is that when you're aware that you're smart, which like obviously if you're like a brain surgeon, you're going to know that you are clearly an intelligent person. Um, Sometimes it's hard to realize how dumb you are in other areas.
Hmm.
Like you think that that intelligence just carries over everywhere. So it's a lot harder for people to convince you that you're wrong about something.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, the first thing a lot of people learn is what they believe forever. And it's very hard to convince them that that's not true anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with people being like just really scared of feeling stupid. Like I think people really hate feeling like they're stupid. And I'm not saying like I think they are stupid. It's just that's the
You can
feeling that
say
they
that. You
have.
you can say it. It's all right.
Is that admitting that you're wrong about something and having to come to terms with the fact that like there is information that you didn't have and having to change your views on something, I think it makes people feel stupid. And I think that they're just terrified of that feeling. Like we have this, it's really weird because we're like simultaneously like incredibly anti-intellectual while also um, acting like, you know, stupid people don't deserve to live,
Yeah.
basically. Like there's very much this attitude of like, well, they should have made better choices. They should have, you know, they should have gotten a better job. They should have done this, this, and this. So it's like thinking that you are stupid is like thinking that you don't deserve those things either. Like eh, everyone wants to, I don't know, feel like they make the right choices and like
Yeah.
they got where they are because they're smart and because they made the good choices, not like those other people that made the bad choices.
It's like how everyone thinks they're a good driver. Like everyone thinks they're an above average driver, although that's impossible. I used to be a recruiter for the Army years ago. And morality of that, I understand, notwithstanding, I get it, but I just tell the story. But we would do these practice tests for people that wanted to take the ASVAB to enlist. And by the way, uh that's where most people are weeded out. Like I'd say 70% of the people that want to join the army can't pass the practice test, which is pretty shocking. But yeah, it's by far the number one thing that disqualifies people. But I would do these tests with people and I would try to help them out and everything. And so if you get a 50 on the test, that qualifies you for like 80, 90% of the jobs in the army. But
Mm-hmm.
you need a 31 to pass. And so I would have people come in and they would score like a 32, a 33 on the practice test. I was like, okay, what kind of job you want? They're like, yeah, I want to be a medic. And I was like, you want to be with this score, like you barely passed, and you think that they just let anyone be a nurse or a medic? And that it stunned me because I do get that no one thinks they're stupid. No one thinks that. But they actually thought they were smart. And that's the
Yeah.
weird thing. Like that really throws me off. And I honestly, the one with intelligence too is kind of unfair. An example I give a lot is that people call me smart. They say that I am smart. But they only say I'm smart because I happen to have, skills and knowledge in areas that are kind of rare in the public. Like, I can rattle off lots of dates and names, and I can speak in public and do it well, which is a skill not a lot of people don't have. But I don't know anything about cars at all. And so
Yeah.
there's another guy here who could, take apart and put together a car engine. He's skilled. I'm smart, but he's skilled. Like, no, we're both smart. We're just smart in different ways. But, just the way we view intelligence is kind of skewed in the first place.
Definitely. Like you call me smart, and I'm like, no, I'm an idiot, actually. Like I feel like I'm an idiot in so many areas because I'm like, sure, I know some things that people might find impressive, but I also don't know so many things. And I feel like I'm, like lacking so much knowledge about so many different subjects. And I think a lot of people really struggle to come to terms with that idea that they don't know things. But like you said, yeah, I'm good at things that people think are impressive. Like I can do math pretty well. I'm really good at statistics, which a lot of people struggle with. But I mean, the car one for sure. Yeah. Like I don't know anything about cars, but I'm also just really bad at a lot of things that other people find to be incredibly easy.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I don't think that my skills are any more valuable or make me any more valuable, like as a person, than the people who have the opposite skill set of me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just lucky that I was born with a brain that's good at connecting dots and drawing like logical conclusions about stuff, and that I like to learn. But other people, they like to learn about other things, and that doesn't mean that they are, I don't know, lesser. Like I
Yeah.
just don't. We value certain skill sets, but
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's really any truth to the idea that some are better than others.
I I do have to push back on you on the dot connecting thing because most people are pretty good at connecting dots. It's just, are you connecting the right ones? That's the issue here. Because like a lot of conspiracy, like you've seen the Charlie Day memes, like the conspiracy theorists. Because you see people like the human brain is a dot connecting machine. It's really good at it. It's too good at it, and people go off into some weird direction. So there's like some alternate universe out there where you're using this super brain of yours to like go off on weird like hollow earth conspiracy shit like that you definitely could have ended up there, but fortunately not.
Well, I mean, there was a point in time where I found conspiracy theories really compelling. Um,
Which ones?
Not
I
that
gotta hear it. Which ones?
it's not that I didn't believe them. I kind of, I don't, I don't know. Like, I don't feel like there's any reason to believe in them because it's like if they are true, then there's nothing we can do about it, and there's no proof of it. And if they aren't true, then same. So it's just kind of pointless. Um, but I found the way that people like came to those conclusions to be really interesting. And I know that I'm going to make myself sound horrible here because anytime I tell people this, they're like, "Oh my god, you idiot." But I at one point was like, yeah, I understand why people believe in the flat earth theory. Not
Mm-hmm.
that I believe it or that I think it's true, but I understand why people do. Like if you find out that, the things that you've believed to be true your whole life aren't true, which a lot of people have
Mm-hmm.
been figuring out in the
Yeah.
past decade or so, then you kind of start to wonder, well, is anything
Yeah.
true? And like people try to draw conclusions that still affirm their view of the world. Even if they're like, oh, I was wrong, like, there is a deep state and the government is controlling everything and, these global elites or whatever, and NASA's lying to us. It still is reaffirming like their beliefs that they had before that, in a way, like not the actual beliefs, but how do I put this? It's still comforting to them. Like it's not that big of a stretch from where they already were usually, which is like somewhere conservative.
Oh,
Um,
always. You've
to
never met
distrust
a
the government.
left-wing flat earther. Like you will not run across them. Like it's always conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a way for them to, distrust the government, while still trusting like their politicians. Their
Yeah.
politicians are the good guys.
Yeah.
Um, and if you have that level of distrust, and then people are showing you evidence of flat Earth, like, oh well, the flight patterns and uh, like they have stories and stuff that they tell that are like impossible to confirm.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say like, oh, this plane, it took off here, but they had to do an emergency landing, and it was in this spot that it would only be possible for them to land there if the Earth was flat. Stuff like that. And if they don't have any kind of knowledge to let them know that that doesn't like that's not true, like if the only knowledge they have is that they were told the Earth is round and they don't understand the
Yes.
science behind it, they can't fact check any of it. All they can do is be told something is true or something's not true.
Yes. I said this once because I met a couple flat earthers a while ago, and I came to a similar conclusion because as I was talking to them, I really sat and thought about it. Like, if you ask just your average person, not a flat earther, hey, how can you prove the earth is round? How many people could actually give you a solid answer on that? The vast majority of people couldn't. It's like, well, that's what I've been told. That's what was said in the books. And then
Exactly.
yeah, if that's all, if your foundation is that shaky, yeah, someone could come along with a poorly made YouTube video and talk about how the earth is flat. You're gonna buy it. And so because you have no reason to think about, all the aspects that we can, the way we improve the earth is flat. But one thing that you said that I love, because I say this too, the conspiracy theories that I don't understand why people waste any time on are ones like chemtrails, for example. They say, oh, yeah, there's chemtrails out there. I was like, okay, let's say you're correct. What am I supposed to do with this information? Like, what am I supposed to do? What is your recommended course of action to ameliorate this situation? And there's nothing. It's just talking to talk. And that's where a lot of conspiracy theories fall down. But some conspiracy theories are real, like MK Ultra actually happened. Like
Yeah.
that's legitimate conspiracy theory. And it's also my favorite one because the CIA, it has admitted, yeah, we tried to use drugs to mind control people, but it didn't work. But what I love about that is if it did work, we wouldn't know. It's like they and also, just because they said they did it and they stopped doesn't mean they actually stopped. Like they could still be working on that and we'd have no idea. So there's interesting conspiracy theories, and then there's ones that are just bonkers that don't really matter, but it is kind of fun.
uh yeah, the what would we even do about it if it was true thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what I meant with like it's comfortable. They don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like it allows them to, come to terms with the fact that like the world isn't this wonderful perfect place that they thought it was. We see this a lot with people coming to terms with the fact that capitalism is bad. Like they find ways to still believe that capitalism is like the ultimate good by saying, well, this isn't real capitalism, or it's actually just these, this group of bad actors,
Yeah.
usually anti-Semitic route
It
that are,
always ends up there. It
yes,
always ends up there.
they're the ones that are ruining this beautiful capitalist system. So it's a way for people to come to terms with like this new information and still not have to do anything about it. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah. It's true. It's which I don't know. To me, that's so hollow. I don't understand. Like I generally don't understand that way of thinking. It's like, well, the solution is that it's demons controlling everything. It's like that's what you're settling on, and you're good with this, and you're just gonna roll with it. But for some reason, it's comforting to people. Remember, I wanted to ask, I didn't have this written down to you, but what made you decide to start doing videos to talk about, your political views or any views, whatever? I you know my videos are political and everything I think of, but yours but it's like what made you go down this road? Because I will say before you answer, I have a begrudging respect for anyone who makes make content. Like I may disagree with everything they say. I may think they're the worst thoughts and ideas in history, but making content is hard. And it's like the hardest part, because you're getting started, you're scared and you're nervous because you put it out there, you take the risk that no one's going to give a shit. No one's going to watch it. No one's going to care. And that's going to sting. And then if people do watch it, you're going to have people that are going to shit on you, which stings as well. So I do have begrudging respect for anyone who makes content, because putting yourself out there is not easy. And I see why most people don't. And so I was curious, like, what got you into doing this?
Yeah, I am really bad at it.
No, you're not.
I have a really hard time with it. It takes me a really long time to make videos because I'm very bad at organizing my thoughts. Like they're just like all over the place.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I cannot get them to go in a straight line.
I have to call time out real quick. I remember I've been following you a long time, like over a year, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember one video you made last year, and you like turn the camera over to show like pages of notes that you had. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? I couldn't believe it. I know some people make scripts. I don't do scripts because I don't know, I just don't do it.
Yeah.
But I remember I was like, wow, I was blown away. So yeah, I get it. That was shocking.
I really struggle with it because I'll learn new stuff and I'll be like, oh, I need to tell somebody about this. But then I'm like, what if they don't have, like we were talking about earlier with the missing steps in between information, it being shocking. Like if they're missing these like 10 steps before this, then this isn't going to make any sense to them and it's going to sound absolutely crazy. So I need to tell them all these other things first. And then like I just end up going off to where I can't even put my ideas into order because I'm like, I need to give them all this background information and it's so difficult. But I started doing it because when the Roe v. Wade or the Dobbs decision leaked, I was looking over the document and I was like just hardcore doing research on it. Like recently I was like, oh, I don't want to watch any of my old videos. I probably sound so dumb. And then I watched them and I was like, oh, wait, no, I actually was onto something there.
Solid bangers. Sydney's pumping out solid gold.
The video quality is terrible, but I was like onto something. But I was like doing research on it and stuff and coming to all these conclusions. And, you know, I figured out pretty early on like that it was mostly about like getting rid of Roe v. Wade because of the precedent that that's set with the right to privacy. And I knew that that was like where they were going with it. And I wanted to tell people, I was like, why does nobody know this? Why is no one talking about this? So I wanted to tell people and I wanted to get feedback on my ideas and stuff. But like I said, I don't really know anybody in real life that is anywhere close to my political beliefs. So if I were to tell them that, they would be like, even like my liberal friends are like, okay, conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme. This is why. So one of the many reasons I'm so grateful to be, you know, a content creator is that it does allow me to actually talk to people like you, because everyone that I do this with says the exact same thing. Like I'm the only person I know that is like this, you know, and it's so cathartic to be able to find people out there, you know, several states away, you know, that think the same thing. It's pretty good. Shit, you said, oh, the video quality too thing. I am with you on that. I go back and watch like the first videos I made. Unwatchable. I can't believe anybody watched that garbage. Like like what you said, content solid gold. I can't no critiques there, but I didn't understand lighting or angles or anything. It's just like dog water for the. It's just awful, but it is pretty. It's good to see the progression. It's good to see the progression how it's going. But what 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 have you found out about yourself or about the community from making these videos? Like what have you learned over how long have you been doing this? A year or a year and a half, maybe?
About a year and a half, I think.
Okay, me too. About the same amount of time. Like what have you learned the most?
Um, well, for starters, just being able to talk in front of the camera and get my ideas out and stuff. Like you know, I don't know, grown a lot in that area. And I think it's been very good for me just doing that. But I've definitely gone just considerably more left since I started. And it's because like I love talking to people in my comment section. Like a lot of people will be like, hey, you don't have to reply to everybody. And I'm like, I know, but that's why I have this channel, because I want to talk to people about stuff, even when they disagree with me. Like I want to understand why people think the way that they think and where they're getting these ideas from so that I can, you know, better understand it and better address it. And it also pushes me to look stuff up because I don't want to make myself look dumb. So
Right.
I always, even if it's something that I believe to be true, I will go and fact check myself to make sure that I'm not saying something wrong And in doing so, I always end up going down these like massive rabbit holes and learning a bunch of new stuff. And especially when people do present stuff to me that I had never heard before, that is new information. Um, it it caused me to learn so much new information and think about things in so many different ways that it ended up just pushing me so far left.
That's true. I mean, I can't imagine they drop new information on you all that often. So it's got to be a
No,
pretty
very
rare.
rare.
I was about to say it's gonna be pretty rare, I would imagine. But I I'm the opposite. I rarely respond to comments or even read a lot of them, honestly. It's just I don't know. I've had so many times where I know you've had this happen where you look at a comment, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? You read this shit, and I will say this too. I have extra respect for women who make content because one thing that surprised me, I shouldn't have been, but one thing that surprised me of making content is, especially on TikTok, the racism is really bad on TikTok. It is really bad. So I've gotten oddly numb to it, where it's like, what do you know, you thick-lipped monkey and stuff like, okay, all right, that stuff's gonna happen, whatever. The sexism, way worse. Like, as bad as the racism is, the sexism is way worse. Just like I I am amazed any women make content at all because it is a jungle. It is terrible.
Surprisingly, I really don't experience that much like sexist hate comments.
Really?
I very rarely have people comment on my appearance at all. Every now and then somebody will say like people only listen to you because you're pretty or something like that, and I always respond to them. I'll be like, you think I'm pretty?
Well,
and
that's
it throws
exactly
them
what
off
I would
because
say.
they're
That's
like,
exactly yeah.
no. But I really don't get that much sexist hate. And I think it is really just because I'm white. I don't have any distinguishing features that like make people on edge. Like Lady Izdihar. Do you follow her?
No.
Oh, okay. She's a Soviet historian,
Mhm.
and she makes content, and she gets just the worst comments from people, like just the most vile hate. And it's because she wears a hijab.
Yeah, that's it. That's a easy.
And I don't have anything like that. So I really just don't get a lot of actual hate. It's mostly just dismissiveness, like a
That
lack of respect.
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, do you like? I would imagine like the condescension is what I see a lot of. Is like, know
Yeah,
your
that's
place,
definitely
little lady.
it.
That stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't get a lot of like actual hate, but I get a lot of the kind of sexism that like I experience in real life, just uh being dismissed and people just automatically questioning what I'm saying. And it's like if they were watching a man's video, they would be like, "Oh, this guy knows his stuff. I'm learning something new." But then they
Yeah.
see my video and they're like, "I don't know."
This is this has been one of, well, I mean, it's not news to you, but you just said this what I'm about to say. But I would I remember conservatives still do this, how they all have hate boners for AOC, and they're always talking about how dumb she is and this stupid fucking bitch, what does she know, and everything. And like AOC is really smart. Like I mean, people may not agree with her politics and stuff, but you can't pretend she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff she says, I'll say the same thing. No one calls me stupid. Like, it doesn't happen, and it's because like I'm not a young woman, and young women are not viewed with any respect at all, and so you can immediately dismiss what they have to say, and it's infuriating. But that's what I would expect, is that people just like, well, what the hell do you know? Like, the men are talking.
Yeah. I do see like in your comment section a lot people being like, I don't agree with this stuff, or I'm conservative or something, but you make a really great point. Like it's like they actually listen to you.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
come across the problem all the time, which I don't think is just because I'm a woman. I think it's also very much because of what I'm talking about, but where people just assume that they know what I'm saying before I say it. And that's what frustrates me the most. I will get so frustrated over that because I'm like, I literally responded to this in the video.
Yeah, I remember So I've learned so much doing this is that I would always get annoyed when I would watch like YouTube videos or stuff, and the person talking like, listen, uh, don't comment until you've like watched the video about this. I was like, why do people do this? I get it now. Like, I get it now. Like, people will watch 13 seconds of a video and then say, well, a smart guy, you ever consider this? I'm like, yeah. And whenever I do see those, I do jump on those comments. I always say, oh, that's a good point. I should have brought this up exactly 98 seconds into the video. That's my go-to for that, because it does happen all the time. It's infuriating, but I don't know. It's just like, I'm glad that we get the opportunity to do this, because it does need to get done. So I wanted to ask you, oh man, went way over, but about the communism thing, because I've had discussion with like a few of my friends that I grew up with and everything, and having differing views on embracing or distancing ourselves from words like communist and Marxist and socialist. And like we know the arguments. One argument is these words have been so tainted over time that it's kind of like how conservatives don't know what communism means. They don't know what fascism means either. It's just
Yeah.
that that's bad. Communism is bad, fascism is bad. That's all they know. And so if you come out to the public and say that you're a Marxist, they're like, okay, well, that's a bad person. And then the other side of the argument is, well, no, we need to actually do our best to educate folks and let them know what these things mean, no matter how long it takes. And I know where you fall on this, but like, how do you tell us how you feel about it?
Yeah, that's one thing that I definitely changed my mind over time. Um, I was also of the opinion at one point, like, oh, well, we need to be strategic about this. Like, people are so scared of communism and socialism. We should try to, maybe move away from that. Or I would do a lot of like conceding people's points, like, yeah, it was bad in the USSR, but blah, blah, blah. And in Black Shirts and Yellow, or Black Shirts and Red by Michael Parenti. He says in there at one point, he's talking about how historically the Communist Party and the Socialist parties in America during the Red Scare started like just bashing communism. Like, well, we're not that kind of, we're not communists, we're socialists, and it's different actually. And this is what we care about. We're not like those totalitarian one party leader states. And he points out that it never made a difference. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
He said it doesn't matter if you are a like hardcore USSR Marxist Leninist or if you're a literal liberal. If you are calling for like healthcare or more rights or anything like that, they're going to call you a communist.
Yep.
And they're going to dismiss everything you say. As long as you're calling for those things that go against capitalism, that's the response you're going to get. So there's no reason to try and make people feel better about it. Like if I'm having a one-on-one conversation with somebody like in real life, like my dad or any of my coworkers or something like that, I'm not going to just like start like shoving communism down their throat, because I know that they would immediately shut down and stop listening to me. So in those situations, I will kind of talk about the ideas without using the words. But in general, I think it's a really bad idea to do that. I also think most people who are attracted to the left, it's because they're looking for the truth, and they're looking for, they've been disillusioned by the Democrats and by their, democracy and stuff like that. So they are looking for something real and something true. And so I don't think that it's a good strategy to try to like manipulate people by changing our language to trick them into being communists or to trick them into being socialists. Because I think that is just very off-putting to the vast majority of people that would be attracted to the ideas in the first place.
Yeah. Tell me what you think about my strategy on this. This is what I've been doing over the years, is that I don't come out, like if I'm meeting somebody or if I'm like in a new environment, a new job or whatever, I don't, my first foot forward isn't the communism thing. I don't. I'm just TJ, and they know me. They know me, they trust me, they look up to me. I have that effect on people. And then months into it, I drop the C bomb on them. Oh, by the way, I'm a communist. And it shatters their brain. Like it is, because to them, communist is an insane person, someone who's is evil. And then they're stuck and they're like, okay, all right, so this person that I know and respect and is obviously not insane is saying something insane, and they have to look into it. Now, that works for me. I don't know if that works for everybody because, geez, this is going to sound incredibly conceited, but I am. But it's like the person I am, that kind of person this works on. Like it's someone who, oh God, someone who doesn't look ugly, or doesn't who knows how to dress and knows how to talk and knows how to present ideas and just be a good conversationalist, tell jokes, that stuff, like stuff that just makes you conventionally attractive to the population. That works. Now, if I wasn't that person, that wouldn't work quite as well. And so I don't know, like it's up to different people, but that's how I do it. I don't know, how do you try it yourself?
Yeah, even with people that I know that are like I have friends and stuff, or I had friends kind of had a falling out over the Palestine thing.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
But I find it so frustrating because this happens all the time where people will tell me like, "Oh, you're so smart. Like you're my smart friend," like stuff like that. And they listen to me about almost everything, but then when it's something that they already had an opinion on, like somebody else got to them first, they'll act like they'll just act like I'm, their racist Facebook uncle that gets all of their information from memes.
Yeah.
And it's like that respect is just automatically gone as soon as I present them with something that is, uncomfortable to think about.
Yeah, that's true. You're not going to win them over immediately, or maybe even at all. In a lot of ways, I find humor to be incredibly disarming. That a lot of ways that with uncomfortable topics, that if you can like make them laugh about it, which not everyone can do either, but it's tricky. Everyone's got their different strategy. Like it works for different people. I don't know.
Yeah, going back to the skills thing from earlier, charisma is definitely not one of the skills that I have. That is the skill that you have.
Charisma. That's my whole life I have just coasted on luck and charisma. Like that's it. Like it is true. It's I wouldn't say you don't have charisma. I don't know why. I don't know why you said that. I said it that way. You don't think so?
I don't think so at all. I used to really want to be a politician when I was younger, and then I came to the conclusion when I was like probably like 18 to 20. I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't think I have the skill set for that.
Oh God. Yeah. It's funny that people say that politics is a popularity contest. It is. It's exactly what it is. It's just, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I talked about how I would tell people that I was a mark. I did this in the Army. I did it all the time. I would have like my platoon and like a bunch of, corn-fed dudes from Possum Dick, Arkansas, and they'd be standing there, talking about their conservative values. And I'm just giving just straight up, like Trotsky stuff to them and everything. And I can't tell you how many times they said stuff like, man, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I would vote for you if you ran. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you do that? And then it goes like, oh yeah, because they like me. And that's all you need to get people. I mean, honestly, like it's why Trump, it's one of the many reasons that Trump ended up working, because say what you want about Trump, the guy has buckets of riz. Like he's just like, he's confident and he's funny. Not just unintentionally. The man has great comedic timing. He's quick on his feet. He's a normal person sees him and thinks, okay, yeah, that's the TV man. I kind of like him. And it's sad that that's all it takes to win elections, but it works.
Yeah, definitely. kind of get the opposite reaction a lot, where people will automatically disagree with me, even if they didn't already. Like, even if they didn't have an opinion on it, they were neutral. And then I'll share mine, and they're like, actually, the opposite.
Nope. I think the
I do think I have charisma with like, or like, people might find me charismatic if a very niche group of people. But I think to the general public, they're like, I don't know what she's talking about.
and unfortunately, I think the woman thing comes into play too a lot. It does. It's like it's just like you're taken less seriously. I mean, that's just the way it is, and it's just unfortunate, but that's true. But I want to wrap it up with this. So, that being said, what are your expectations or your predictions for us to find some way to have a consolidated, powerful, motivated left-wing, force in the United States? Like, do you see it happening? Is it a pipe dream, or what do you think?
Well, right now, with the way that so many liberals are just completely disillusioned to the Democratic Party because of Biden's reaction and the Democratic Party's reaction to what's happening in Palestine, um, so many people are actually considering voting third party this election. Like, it's always floated around as an idea, but most people are like, no, it's not realistic. But this time, like, there's so many people that are like, I don't care if it's realistic. I'm voting for like Claudia de la Cruz. That's who I like the most. But I've just been seeing, she seems incredibly popular now. I think that just showing how popular these viewpoints are is the best way to make more people, like, that's the only way to really get any kind of movement on the left or growth on the left. So many people are really apprehensive to attach themselves to ideas and stuff that they don't think are popular. And the more popular they seem, the more likely people are to attach themselves to them and to open themselves up to those ideas and not just immediately dismiss them. So even if Claudia de la Cruz doesn't win or a third party doesn't win, I think just the amount of attention that it's getting and the like, if a significant amount of people do vote for her, that would be really significant and opening up the idea of the left to more people. But on the note about like a consolidated left, I don't really think that it's necessary. Like, the reason people are consolidated in the Democratic or Republican Party is really just because those are the only options.
Yeah.
It's not that they all have the same opinions on things, or that
they don't all, at all.
Yeah, or that they all, have the same definitions for words and stuff. Like, the left gets, shit on a lot for, defining words differently. Like, that we don't all have the same definition for communism or socialism, and it confuses people. And it's like, yeah, but if you ask liberals what liberalism is, they're not going to all know the answer or all have the same answer. It's just nobody asks them. And I think that the, differing opinions and views on the left is actually where a lot of the strength comes from. When everyone's parroting the same thing, that's not because they actually believe those things. That's because that's what they've been told. And you don't see that on the left, and it makes people think like, oh, they're disjointed. They can't come to the same consensus on stuff. But really, it's just because people are actually coming to these conclusions naturally instead of just all parroting the same thing.
Yeah, the popularity of the policies, this is the impasse that I keep running into, because I think you're correct in that in order for us to get by, we have to point out like, hey, a lot of people actually do want universal health care. A lot of people do want paid family leave or stuff like that. But the problem that I run into is that you talk about all this stuff and like, oh yeah, even conservatives a lot of times like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. But then it's like, well, yeah, but the queers are in the schools, and that's what they vote on, and that's what gets them over, and it works all the time. It's working less and less, thankfully. It's working less and less, but that cultural wall is just people. I know it's cliche to say they vote against their interests, but they do all the time. They vote against their interests just because they don't like the fact that their 9-year-old can see a man in a dress, and like that covers that everything, and that's the difficult part, the way I see it.
Oh, I definitely don't think that it would ever, at least not in my lifetime, that it would ever be like an actual majority of people that
Mm,
are anti-capitalist or are communist. Um, because like I think that like the brainwashing is just too good, you know, like it is just too much for people to overcome the idea of capitalism being good. And a lot
yeah,
of that from like the mythological history that we're taught.
yeah,
Like we are taught like a version of history that's just not true. Like we never had the like 60s housewife perfect nuclear family thing. Like that wasn't real. But people believe it is. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
instead, you know, wanting something other than capitalism, they want the good capitalism, the capitalism of the past.
It's
And
God,
they can't accept that even if that was real, you can't move backwards.
it's so frustrating that people genuinely believe this, like to their core. It reminds me, it's like well, it's not, capitalism isn't bad, it's like the bad capitalists are in there and they're ruining it for everybody. It reminds me of those stories that you read about from the Middle Ages, where the peasants revolt against the lord and the noble, and they march, like they kill the nobleman and they march to the king, and like the king just doesn't know what's going on. If we told the king what's happening, he would take care of us. It's like that's exactly how we are. It's exactly like that. It's like, oh, look, it's kind of like where like conservatives kept complaining about Twitter and everything. It's like if we had the right guy owning Twitter, then everything would be fine. And it's like it's really frustrating. Like we get accused of being condescending to conservatives a lot. How can you not? I mean, like we have to talk to them like children. Like their understanding of reality, of economics, of history, of culture, of science, of like any carpentry, like anything, like whatever. It's like it is that of a child, and I. It's so goddamn frustrating. I don't know what to do about that, but we're trying our best, folks. We are trying.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Very frustrating.
Good stuff. Good stuff. How did that go? I know you said you were kind of nervous going into it, but I thought it might be better for you with the recording and everything instead of being live and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I probably sound really not great in
Oh,
a
it's
lot of parts of it. I feel like I couldn't get my points across. That's just what I'm nervous about and struggle with. I have a hard time like consolidating my thoughts and making my mouth say them. Um,
mouth no do what want to. It's like no. I'm gonna make you look great. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not gonna
yeah,
put
I
anything.
hope you can piece something together. I hope the sound's not too bad since I'm like holding my phone.
Oh, that's all right. You've been holding. I was gonna say you've been holding your phone the whole time. Your arm must be on fire.
No, it's resting on a pillow.
Oh, okay. All right. Like, damn.
I'm not that strong.
Okay. I was like, because I see your arm out there. I was like, it was painful. But well, listen, I appreciate you coming on here, and I'm gonna laboriously get through editing this, when I figure out this shit. I'm trying to make borders on Photoshop and stuff, and alter the angles and everything. And I'm so fucking old. Like this time has passed me by. I'm 41, and it's sad, but I'm trying my best here. But I do appreciate you and your work. Like I said, I've been following you for. I started doing videos in March, and I think I followed you like last summer, and I think your content is incredible. And I mean it every time I say it. When I say you're the smartest person I follow, it's it's exactly what we were talking about. What like how intently your notes and your references, and like you put little books in the captions, or not the captions, but the little the description of the video. Yours like paragraphs long. I was like, man, I'm never gonna do that. Couldn't
I
even
always
know.
finish the video and then I'm like, I forgot this part.
Yeah, it's your dedication to I've lost the word, but your dedication to annotation, your dedication, that was good. God, dedication to annotation. Your dedication to annotation is very impressive on top of all of the work that you do. And I am honored to have you on. I really appreciate it.
if it's not salvageable, if you can't pull anything together from this, I won't be offended. I promise.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. And if you'd like to do it again, let me know. I'm always looking for people to talk to, and I will have you on anytime you like.
Yeah, if I do, I'll work on getting a mic and something somewhere to put my phone and